count my achievements, have to look up in the rafters for banners. Less of a dying breed, blame it on my ancestors. 2 steps ahead, I'm playing chess while you playing checkers.
So first and foremost, what do you think of the new setup?
I was going to ask you, Brad, this is a pretty cool new setup. We making money? Is that what's happening?
No, we're not making.
I don't recall any NDA. Like, it's your host, but how does this work?
You get social media notoriety,
True.
and we're going to count that as more valuable than money for now.
I think what you do is make me cool. So that's, I know what's happening is there's a reach that you have in influencers with a younger crowd, and they're talking to you about me. So that's going to trickle back at some point, right?
Sure. We'll call it that. But yeah, so new desk.
Yep.
New monitors, new lights, extra stabilizer.
You fix the height thing.
Yeah.
We worked my mic thing. I don't know if you guys know, but like I get these feedback, like anything is good, but he sends me pictures of me on the podcast doing things wrong, and he marks them up like with highlighters and goes, "Dad, like you're here and I can't hear you."
You've made editing more of a monster than it already is by having to adjust your audio levels at every turn.
Yeah, I'm giving you a clinic on bad behavior on podcasts and helping you edit.
That's
your
right.
skills, your production skills.
You just make sure the mic stays under you this one.
Yeah, and just 2 hands on the mic.
Exactly. Okay, so yeah, I guess we can get started into episode 3.
That was the pre-podcast banter.
Yeah. That's exactly what that is. Okay. So being that I wanted to cut the episodes into a certain time format, there were some other things I wanted to get into last time, but I split them up into a secondary slot for this one. So one of the things we were kind of leading into that I wanted to talk about was a lot of cybersecurity companies, and I mean, I guess other tech companies as well, but specifically I've noticed a lot in cybersecurity, there seems to be this movement to try and push technology into a fabric.
Yeah.
So instead of just selling a product and services, a lot of companies are trying to sell you on the full fabric on suite of their technologies, and won't even really a lot of the time sell you that one product on its own. You have to buy an encompassing sort of suite. So what I wanted to ask you was, A, why do you think that is? And B, how that changes things. So what does that do to the market and people's ability to build their sort of, security stack?
I think that's an awesome question, because when I'm old and I've seen kind of the waves of best of breed, even emerging tech startups is the way to go, to wait a minute, these guys need to get more COTS like, and we want to consolidate our budget, because it's you actually understand this better than me on a sale, that it's about TCO, total cost of ownership. So you buy the shiny new thing, but careful, you're buying a Jaguar and you need a mechanic and you need all these other things that you're not thinking about that go into the cost.
Right.
And now the used Volvo option versus the Jaguar, you go, wait a minute, that thing, utility wise, cool. Maybe not all the bells and whistles, but as far as maintenance, whatever, it's a better deal on whole. And you get depressed because then you realize all the features and the cool capabilities you thought you wanted are really like 1 and 2 at the top, but 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 at the bottom is all about supportability, scalability, and to your point, integration's the killer, right? Because the problem in security is in the operations side. And so I'm a Soc IR kind of guy, but it's, hey, Soc IR, I'm here to help you out from on high. I'm the CISO. Here's a new tool. And they look at you like, dude, man, I'm swiveling around like worse than your production studio on different tools, because they all have different dashboards. And you want me to, I'm the integrator. I'm taking all these reports and building you a pie chart so you can go do your thing. But
so basically, from an engineering standpoint, ease of use, it's much better to have one fabric that you can sort of already know the tool set for, and not have to be like, okay, how do I integrate my 2 different or 3 or 4 different tool sets into one? That's kind of your angle.
You're right, and you know this on a 3-phase sale, right? Okay, that's the dude on the shop floor. They may call it eyes on glass, but that's to me the person using the tool that goes, you're not making my life easier with these adding more best of breed tools. I get they're awesome, but they're not integrated. So I'm the integrator. It's called sneaker wear or swivel wear, ground floor. Smart guy goes, yeah, I that's a hole in our fabric and I need it. Go pay. And does it help me, hurt me? I like that tool and I want the Jaguar.
Right.
So you get by him, and that's probably the person that saw it, knows that CrowdStrike or Palo Alto is number 1 or 2 and wants, or he likes to start up. The point is he gets to pick the tools.
Right.
Doesn't care. Guy on top, budget guy, right? And I think this best of breed is we have gaps. We did a current state, future state. We're getting owned. I want the new cool stuff that's stopping that threat. That's what I'll pay for. After a while, you're up in the top floor and they're going, so you bought all these tools and we're still getting breached. You go, well, they pivoted and blah, blah, blah. And they go, I'm going to start winning. I'm going to help you. I'm going to consolidate your budget. You need to think about all those CIO things like COTS and consolidation. So the minute your budget starts to contract, you start to tell, dude, those 10 things you want, we're maybe going to get 3. Now the greatest hits looks like a good deal, right? Because you get more, in theory, I cover more of 1 through 5 through my combo fabric. Maybe not great,
right?
But Microsoft's not a security company, but they've made a career out of being good enough. And
you're tied into the fabric, just add an additional thing. Same with your AWS cloud, right? Whatever. For whatever reason, for what I've seen, when it comes to cloud, people stick to their fabric for sure.
Yeah.
It's not very easy to integrate throughout there, but in a security stack, for the most part, it seems like most people will go all around the place, but it just seems like the lane that is being taken now by a lot of companies is trying to create, whether they can or not sufficiently, is to create a fabric and push that. So like you said, one of the pros is, well, you've got all these things in one area and you kind of already understand the fabric. So using the rest of the tools in there is easy. What about the cons of having to use one fabric?
So let's go with that with a couple of examples too, because you're right about the cloud, and the cloud's kind of out there, so you don't feel like you're experiencing vendor lock-in, right? Where if it was on-prem, and I won't name a firewall company, or Microsoft is moving in, they go, we got your Windows and your CIO and all your sysadmins are Windows weasels and they don't like Linux. Then you start to feel like every time I pick something that's not Microsoft, all these other people around me swarm me and go, oh, that's a bad idea. What about this? And you go like, why do you keep pushing Microsoft? And the answer is because we're a Microsoft shop.
Right.
And you go, wow, Microsoft knows that and we're a vendor lock-in. Like, good on them. And then they'll go, Carl, I think you should, like, when you look at best of breed, you should look at Defender. When you look at best of breed SIM, you should look at Sentinel. I think Defender is the endpoint. My point is, every time I go best of breed, someone steers me into Microsoft and I go, it's hard for me to argue back. And Microsoft goes, hey, Carl, I'm going to tell your boss, you may like a point app. It might even be better, but we're going to show you a TCO to your boss that says you should go E5. You should just give up.
Right.
And you kind of go, wow, you're overriding my smart person's decision, or maybe my CISO strategic architecture view that says open systems are good, open architecture is good, best of breed is good.
So why though? So you kind of touched there. Cost effectiveness is another pro, but what are the cons of having a single fabric?
One is vendor lock-in. 2,
but why is that bad?
Okay, vendor lock-in's bad because I'm thinking of you, the sales guy. After you go, Carl, I think you should go E5. You also start jacking up the price of stuff, right? You whatever deep discounts I had, if I just had a best of breed, you'll go volume discount. I want to.
Yeah, price wise, you can get stuck having to pay whatever the price is, and they're likely not going to be very generous in their discounts, knowing that they've got you. Okay, what else is a con of being stuck in one fabric?
I think the other one is they own your roadmap. So if you look at the zero trust journey, it's John Kindervag and it's NIST and it's a lot of open source, let's call it, architecture. But Microsoft has a zero trust journey too, and it shows you, and you're kind of all of a sudden you're locked in the roadmap going, I don't want to drive in that car that way. I want to take my company X way, or I want to be agnostic, right? Because bad example, but let's say GCP versus AWS versus Microsoft. What's your culture? What's your roadmap? If you look at who the best of breed camp is versus who the fabric camp is, it comes down to corporate culture. So a startup, okay, SMBs, whatever, they like Google Cloud and whatever because they're open sourcey people, but they're developers. They're really good at DevOps. They got really smart, agile people. Microsoft is more corporate. Microsoft 365, Office crowd, not necessarily a strong DevOps team. Like they're not doing internal apps. So their culture fits Fabric.
Right.
Whereas if it's an agile startup or you're in the business of cranking out software apps, you have Jira and all these other open source DevOps things, and you want to control, and you want your people to say, we for the benefit of our product, for the benefit of our business, we like these different best of breed things, and we'll pay the price. Like we'll learn them and do them, but we want to chase new technology. We think OpenAI is cool. All that. That OpenAI is a bad example, but my point is
not necessarily.
It's a bad example because Microsoft grabbed it. But if they hadn't have,
well, that's what normally happens, right? When it's good enough, one of those big fabric companies buys it. Is the hope if you're stuck in that fabric too, right? But in short, your point is you can't evolve as the technology evolves, and if you see the roadmap going a different direction, you don't really have control of the wheel there, right? Because they're controlling where their fabric
100%.
goes and you're stuck in that fabric. So if you see new visibility tools that you think are game changing that they're not going to implement, you don't really have an availability to do that.
And now, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's in my mind when I think of the companies that want to sell you a big fabric and they won't allow you to purchase things one off. You basically have to buy the whole system. The reason that's bad is when I relate it to in my personal tech life, that's why I've always been a big Google fanboy, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all open source. If there's something not already built in, you can download APKs, you can sideload things, there's a million different ways that you can, when new stuff comes out, you have an availability to intertwine it sometimes at your own risk. You may end up breaking your phone if you don't know what you're doing, sure. But if you have an Apple phone, you only get whatever Apple's going to push you, and that's it. There is no evolving. You are the Apple fabric, and that's it. And in security, in technology, I mean, at the end of the day, convenience-wise, okay, you don't get the newest stuff, but there's not really big security holes there.
Mm-hmm.
But in cybersecurity, not being able to keep evolving, that's a problem.
And so this is where I get to, I've been a CIO and a CISO. Let's do both parts of that fight club in your brain. The CIO would go, I'm not going to get fired if I pick Microsoft and the COTS. That's prudent. And all my people are going to tell me they're Oracle people or they're MySQL or they're Windows. And you kind of go, well, I'm not wanting to rehire people, so I'm going to go with the flow and not get fired.
Right.
The CISO goes, I'm losing against bad guys. I don't have a lead, and sitting on a lead, not making a mistake is not going to be good. So I actually favor open source or next gen because I go, the bad guys are going to come after Microsoft a lot more than they're going to come after Linux.
Right.
So you got to do both. And it's all about a 5-year roadmap and picking winners. So let's use the CrowdStrike Microsoft example on endpoint. CrowdStrike was best of breed. It was called the 3 Cs. There was CrowdStrike, Cylance, Carbon Black. They were all in the Gartner MQ and all equal. And then there's people. Cylance got bought by BlackBerry.
Okay.
Carbon Black gets bought by Dell, VMware. Nice stack, right? You could go Fabric.
Yeah.
CrowdStrike goes it alone and they stay best of breed. But what do? I'm picking them as a winner because I felt they had a couple of combo technologies, the endpoint stuff and the CTI. I also, they were funded, they were a unicorn. They started buying other companies and building a marketplace. Now, marketplace is a Fabric, but it's best of breed this, best of breed that. Interset got in bed with them, used their agent. So all of a sudden I could get Uweeba +++. Now they're pushing, they're competing with Arctic Wolf and the MDRs with, they bought Humlo as a SIM, and you kind of go, oh, I get CrowdStrike. It's best of breed, but it's got this ecosystem. I'm not locked in.
Right.
Or I can jump on that ecosystem and get all the integrations.
But so to your point, that CrowdStrike is a good example of one that kind of plays both ends, that you're allowed to have integrations in there. We want you to stick into our fabric, but we allow...
I could swap them out.
But that's not often the case.
It's not, but I picked the winner of the best of breed, and they
Right.
started becoming a fabric. Microsoft, on the other hand, got really good at best of breed. They didn't used to have a SIM. They didn't used to have an
Well,
EDR.
that's the other thing is when you have, so like when you have a company like a Microsoft that's building a fabric, I wouldn't be as nervous because they're just going to buy out
Yeah.
companies that do things well, right? They're big enough that they can afford to buy the best of the
Right.
best of the upcoming. But say, I don't know.
Well, look
some
at
of these-
Carbon Black. Where's Carbon Black now? They used to be top 3. Got bought by VMware. VMware gets bought by Dell. They try to do the stack. They don't continue to develop the software.
Well, and this is the only, to be devil's advocate to what I just said. A lot of the times when these big companies consume these other companies that are doing something very niche, the guys in the company cash out.
Yep.
And the people who were
Right.
progressing it are no longer there. And the Microsoft guys aren't going to take it to the next level. So the technology
Right.
kind of gets stagnant, and then
100%.
now it's kind of stuck.
So if you go best of breed, be prepared to like own legacy stuff that's dying, and you have to keep like semantic,
Right.
right? Be in love with it and go, this is so critical to our company that we'll keep it going. And I got to bet on the winners.
Well, the
other
problem,
side is fabric is like you said, even if they buy the winners, they're going to crush them.
Well, so this is, I don't think that happens too often at the big guys like Microsoft. Like I said, I wouldn't be too worried on that scale. And then obviously if you get something like a CrowdStrike that has
Big enough.
a lot of integrations, that's great too. The problem I see, in my opinion, are the sort of, and it's not always a problem, but I look at like the Fortinets,
Yep.
the Palo
Yeah,
Altos,
let's go there.
the Zscalers. They've got good stuff in their fabric. Don't get me wrong. Like
Yep.
you build around a central area. You
Yep.
build around your cloud in Zscaler or your firewalls in Palo and Fortinet.
Yep.
And then there's a ton of good fabric stuff that integrates into it.
Yeah.
And for the most part, that's a great story.
Right.
But the problem becomes they're so set on selling you that fabric
Yeah.
that they'll buy anything to be able to sell you
100%.
every little piece.
They'll
and,
take them out.
and the rest of those little pieces,
Yeah.
a lot of them aren't good. Like just call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
A lot of the 40X or the
Yeah,
Palo Alto add-on are
not-
not good. They have a lot of good,
Right.
like their main stuff is really good, but there's some add-ons that are not good.
So let's go there, right? Because we'll finish off the answer, the correct answer to the Microsoft CrowdStrike EDR contest in mind is buy both. Like have a major minor. Go, I think we're going this way because in the next 2 years, this is the right way to go TCO-wise. But I swear in 5 years, this is going to be the evolved company. And,
Right.
and do you think there's going to be a big change in the next 5 years, be it AI or whatever? I'd keep them as a minority so I can almost like a backup restore.
Yeah, the difficult thing though, this is where I kind of
About
got
money.
into, not just the money though, is like you can't really just buy a piece of Zscaler. Like you have to buy the whole
Right,
fabric.
right.
And then it's not very easy to integrate into.
Right. So let's switch to that. But you see my major minor, like anytime I was a CIO, I had a lot of Windows stuff and it was cheap and I bought Lenovo. I went, oh, that's for all the users, but I'm going to have 20% of my users be Mac and have open source products on them. It's a pain in the ass
That's difficult to run too.
but every time Microsoft come in and go, Carl, E5 and we own you, I go, you see that little lab experiment I got in the corner, buddies?
Yeah.
Don't piss me off on TCO.
And obviously where available, like I hear in the government a lot, they want to be multi-vendor
Yeah.
solutions, right? Like
In theory.
they're trying to pivot to let's not put all our eggs on one basket
Mhm.
because of some of the things that we said on having all one fabric.
Mm-hmm.
But also something that we didn't mention is when you have a vulnerability that needs to be patched, if that means your whole network needs to be
Yeah.
patched and you are relying on
Single-
Fortinet to do that, you're in a lot of trouble,
Single point of failure.
right? So you don't want a single
Or-
point of failure. So you need to have multi-vendor solutions.
Or say they have a chip problem.
Right. There's a lot of things that can come up that having a single fabric
Yep.
is not good for. So there's pros and cons, but in my professional opinion, the cons outweigh the pros. I would not want one fabric.
I would. I'm an architect, right? So I live by principles. Agnostic, vendor agnostic. Fabrics are good. Open systems are good, and you try and live with those commandments, realizing every time you make a decision, you do make a commitment. It's almost like my view is, if we're going to get in the fabric business or the best of breed business, we're getting into the private public partnership thing where I want to stare those, not the salespeople, but the company in the eyes and go, are you going to be around in 5 years? And is my culture and my roadmap lining up with yours? Like, what are your feature lists and what are you trying to do? And is that what I want my company to have?
Yeah.
Because all those strategies go sideways as soon as you pick a vendor. Now you're married to them, right?
Well, and this is the problem that the reason I brought up the whole fabric situation is that's the problem I foresee is these companies are looking at it from a business standpoint of, well, we're really sticky if we get this fabric, and then they're stuck in here, and business, like Apple has made a killing. They're one of the biggest companies in the world because you get stuck in their fabric and there's no way out. You just, everything that you've learned to use is different on purpose because they want you to only be able to be stuck there, right? And that's a great business model.
It's a huge...
But when you talk about cybersecurity, that's a little bit dangerous. Good. Like, okay.
Well, especially since today's fabric is tomorrow, you become a target and you're probably not the right security fabric in a couple of years.
And so that's concerning to me that cybersecurity companies are just looking at that business aspect and not looking at what if we had a major failure and what if all the fabrics went down and then like there's a lot of people in trouble, right? Like we're not talking about side tech that you keep in your phone. We're talking about government infrastructure and like...
Well, like encryption by definition has to be open source. It has to survive in the wild because of the time it takes. And if that was just a company and it got hacked, you'd go, all our encryption standards are based on your proprietary technology and you've been hacked and now we're dependent on you as a company.
And that's where I started ISG was kind of getting into was the cryptographic 100%. Vulnerability assessments. Like, let's look at your encryption keys. How many of them are old? Probably a lot of them, but they're just... People are not ready for that conversation yet, I don't think. And so nobody wants to buy it. But they're getting deep down into like quantum cryptography and they're doing speeches. Like they've got good stuff. It's just that seems so far in the distance from what is on people's agenda. Yeah. But it really should be getting towards the forefront.
You nailed something for me. Like I always called the difference. What's the difference between being a CIO and a CISO? Haha, one letter. But it's a difference. I said it's a difference between bowling and baseball. And people kind of look at me. I go, well, you're pitching. There's a batter. Over here is bowling strikes. After a while, you can get pretty good at bowling and go, baseball.
So does that mean softball is kind of like bowling?
Yeah, softball is kind of like bowling if you're the pitcher, Brad. And he made me be pitcher in his baseball team. So that's why I'm saying it's the hardest position.
That gave him a spot on the team. So
that's true. That is true. And I'm left-handed. Always be left-handed in baseball. They need 50% of you.
That does help a lot. And when you can hit the ball wherever you want to, it's helpful.
I'm the second best batter on the team.
Debatable.
Very debatable. There's other people if they're listening. I'm fourth. So switching back though, you can make those type of long-term pragmatic decisions as a CIO and probably not be wrong. Microsoft. And Microsoft's probably going to be around doing desktops.
It's safe.
Cyber. What most CISOs are gone after 18 months. So you're telling me, and yet I should be long-term focused. I'm probably thinking about the next year in my budget. The truth is, you're right. If I was a really good cyber guy, I would go, we got to think 10 years. Like quantum's the next threat. Companies that don't exist are going to matter.
And you know what? That actually just brought up a good point in my mind. Now that you say that. A big reason I think people are so comfortable going with, say, like a Microsoft, even though things are changing, is because you were able to watch Microsoft over the last 20 years and you go, they kept evolving. Yeah. They kept sticking up with everything that came at them. And so we're confident that as the next things come, they will change the right way. But some of these other younger companies, when shit hits the fan, do we know what they're going to do?
And so there you go. Like in my opinion, and you'll like this from the Red Seal guys, is the CIO is looking in a rearview mirror at history. And he's not wrong that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Okay. But Microsoft is the dinosaur, the crocodile that crossed the Rubicon. All the other companies we now talk about as FANG and the Magnificent Seven and whatever, they didn't exist before 2007 when Jobs goes, iPhone, what do you call it? Not streaming, but... when apps work together.
Like integration?
Integration is a word for seamless. And then Airbnb goes frictionless or Uber, right? These concepts make these other companies huge, but they don't exist before 2007.
Well, also not only like turmoil in the cyberspace that can cause, like, what are
Right.
you going to do? What is
Right.
your next step? But also, what happens to your companies when money starts dwindling and you have to lay people off?
Right.
Like, do you still evolve? Like,
Right.
Microsoft and Google can handle big
Yeah.
layoffs and keep going forward. But what happens when
But-
you have to let go of a bunch
and-
of your best people? Are
and-
you still a product that makes sense?
And I think like those 3 C's, like that's an example of these small companies emerge and this concept called EDR emerges, or UEBA, that I caught. I only caught it because the long in the tooth ones didn't change, right? If Symantec and McAfee had evolved, and Norton, all that stuff from antivirus, no one else, everyone had them deployed. Why would we ever switch to the small guys? Well, the small guys just got bigger and bigger. The old guys couldn't clobber them. And I think all those 3, the CrowdStrike, Cylance, and Carbon Black, all had their DNA from McAfee, like VP level people that went, hey, this is a good idea, but we can't turn around. We've got EPO everywhere. We're selling it. So they left.
Right.
And they got funded and they became unicorns. So they got big enough. But that's a fluke, right? Like you said, in any other scenario, the big guys, 1 can stick around. 2, if they're dinosaurs, they just crush the little ones. That as soon as they see the little ones starting to find a niche, they either buy them
Right.
or build something to go, you don't want to buy them, you want to stick with us. And so I think I want to get back to Pan and the reason why I think like they put something in the press that went, we're going Fabric.
Right.
Their stock dropped. And then, when they sneezed, everyone else caught a cold, like Fortinet and a few other places. I think it's coming back because I think what they're doing isn't saying consolidation is good and Fabric is good. They're recognizing every CISO's budget is about to get cut.
And you know what? Palo, of those that I mentioned, does do something really cool with their Fabric, and that is that they run their firewall system through a credit, sort of a credit system. So you buy credits, right? And then you can maneuver them to different things. So if you're not using the 40 SOAR,
right.
40
Same
SOAR,
idea.
I'm used to Fortinet, but the SOAR functionality of the Palo Alto stuff, you can move that into, say, a SIM functionality in it because you're using a credit system. So you can buy credits and you can move them. You're not like in, say, for instance, a Fortinet, you buy the 40 SOAR, you have a 40 SOAR.
You've got,
That's it.
Yeah.
There's no maneuvering.
We want you to buy the Noah's Ark whether you need it or not.
Right. And like business-wise, the Fortinet one makes more sense realistically, but consumer-wise, the flexibility of having that with Palo Alto, especially from a CISO going, I want to test this stuff out, but what if I decide to pivot? Well, you can move those credits elsewhere. It's
I like
that part of the Fabric is a huge piece of their puzzle.
So now you see where it's all coming together with that stack of IT security buyers. I get told by my CEO, I try to push a budget, but I'm a cost center. And at some point, and this year's going to be it, they go, Carl, man, I love you. And I paid for that. I paid for that. I paid for that. We're still not any more secure. You're the first one to show me the pie charts. And I go, yeah, because the bad guys keep evolving. They say, I'm going to help you out. You have to, like a CIO, you have to consolidate. You have to lose budget. Yeah. That's how we're going to get more productive. And you go, oh man, now I'm smelling like an ROI and all those other things. But the smart salespeople will go, I know what your problem is this year, Carl. You need to figure out how to do this with less. And you're going to lose some people. So you're right. I'll go back and look at them and go, if we got to buy the farm, like if we got to get into bed with a vendor, which one is it? Like there's 2 of you left and who do you like? And who's got the best spread, the best buffet, right?
Right. And that's where a Fabric can have its pros, right? You're running out of budget, but you need to cover as many things as possible, as easily as possible, not having a massive team looking all over it. Then you find a Fabric.
And again, I don't, none of us book a buffet meal if we don't have to.
Right.
But if we have to, I do. Yeah,
well,
that's true. That's not true. We
I
would both.
I know some people that probably would only book a buffet.
Brad, we pay for the hotel. We're going to have the buffet and we're going to max out. We're going to max out. Doesn't matter what the food's like.
I'm pretty sure you've told me that a few times.
Brad, get up.
We are not going anywhere but the buffet.
Okay, that's fair because we have a budget problem.
Exactly.
So my point is that I want to stay as
or you have an internal budget problem.
I have an internal budget problem.
You could have $10,000 to spend, and you're only spending $100.
And your internal clock says, "I want something in that tuck shop that's not in a buffet."
Exactly.
That could be. I'm just saying that for a friend. So my that happens a lot, by the way, not like in the past. So my point is that I think Palo has recognized that. Never mind pros and cons. I think you're being told. And so I'm going to help you with your A problem.
Yeah, in the case that you have to go with a fabric, here's the options. I don't want to give them that much credit. I think they are still making a business move.
100%.
And all of them are, but
they're being marketing. And what they did was they went and surveyed all the CISOs and go, hey, how's it look this year? What's number 2 on your budget? And they all came back and went, dude,
well,
I'm having to consolidate. Like, I'm not looking at buying new stuff. I got a real problem.
Well, do you know how much easier it is too from the salesperson's perspective to go, look, if it doesn't work out with this stuff, maneuver it. I'm not locking you in either. And I can be a better trusted advisor to you because I could go, look, if this doesn't work out, let's look at some other stuff. I'm not going to sell you this and then you get stuck with it. Right?
I think that's why I think it's brilliant, because it gives the CISO something to go back to the CEO with, going, hey, I heard you. Like, I'm not angry that you cut my budget. I'm going to play ball because I want to keep my job. And I heard layoffs, and honestly, in cyber, I would fire the CISO first. No disrespect,
right? You're calling for your own head, but
yeah. And well, that's why I'm a virtual CISO. Show me the door, look at my contract, pay me off.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm Mike Keenan or John Tortorello. So your team needs my help. Yeah. Well, I know after I do that, you're going to get rid of me. So
right.
I don't really care. But I'm going to go back in the color commentary and you're going to pull me back in. It's a different problem, but my point being, you want to be proactive. And if you can come back with a vendor's idea that you're presenting as your own and go, here's an idea, and don't worry about vendor lock-in like Carl's little architecture list. Those are ideals, but I'm still keeping them alive, right? If I get that little credit, I go, well, the credit's only with Palo, but it's a good bet.
Right.
Number one, I'm going to maximize my coin. I'm never going to get locked in. And 2, you're
still locked to a sense. Like you still have to use it in Palo, obviously.
Yeah, but you're hypothetically somewhat like, as soon as you buy 2 best of breeds, I go, so what's your third pick? You buy 2 pieces of IKEA furniture and now you need a table. You could go anywhere.
Right. And like you said, like you can build a really nice best of breed solution, but it's going to be fucking expensive. Like if you want your entire firewall setup to be a dual vendor.
Yeah. And you're going to be
with all the support.
Like I've always said, my buddy Jerry's really good at picking the winners, right? But I call him the
Jerry's good at picking more than winners.
Yeah. And my point is exactly that.
He's good at picking theories and tequila.
He's very good at tequila. He's good at stories.
Yeah.
He's very good at picking stuff.
Actually, I don't know why I haven't gotten Jerry down here yet. Jerry needs to be probably next.
Jerry, you got 10 stories to tell, and they could all happen here.
The problem is, how do I get Jerry to not be a 4-hour episode? That's the real problem.
We have to chunk it. like if he's got a couch.
Jerry part 1, Jerry part 2.
A couch and several clothes, and I think you need to go see him at his Airstream.
Jerry in another planet, Jerry on Earth, Jerry from the 70s, Jerry from the 90s. There's a lot of different Jerrys that could show up.
That pesky Jerry in his time travel. He's the 4th coordinate in the telemetry. Like, what is it? Identity, location, and
Jerry?
Workspace. Was it? Workplace. The users, what do I call them? Workforce, and the apps and the data are workload.
Right.
And then Jerry.
On the outside.
I go, wait a minute. He's in 1970 right now. That's why he's getting in.
He's 5th dimension. He's
yeah. He's stealing my credentials and going back in time before I worked at the company.
Another thing I wanted to talk about, speaking after Fabric. So I just have a concern with Fabric because I just don't think it's good for the consumer. At the end of the day, to protect themselves.
It's not a good thing. It's a vendor thing.
Yeah, I mean, I get the business move, but it's concerning to say the least from my point of view.
Fighting. My answers were what I call a grudging fighting retreat. If I could get away with buying best of breed and keeping my bets open, I would. But I realized that I'm going to get pressure at some point to compromise.
So outside of the problems with having a Fabric, when I look at what else do you have to look for when you've built a nice security stack, even if you've gotten a vendor agnostic ones,
right? What
are the other major big holes? And the reason I bring this up is just because I worked a little bit with this as a partnership at INSA, and it kind of relays also into where I just interviewed for. But the 2 areas that I see big holes are insider threat,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And your SOC team, right? So the 2 main problems after you've built a security stack become, okay, so you've built a nice security stack, but now you don't have enough people to man it. So now you've got all these holes, right? And then on top of that, even if you don't have a SOC problem, you have an insider threat problem. Always, there's a potential for insider threat. So even if you've built the stack and you've got the team, now you have insider threat leaks, and from the inside out, you're being vulnerable.
That's well put, because if you think of the metaphor of castles and moats, that's my security fabric. I'm done. And then someone looks at you and goes, so the drawbridge is up and the moat's around. You go, yeah, we need some people. There's the arrows and the boiling water. Like, how are you going to get people? I go,
what about the king's brother who came and stabbed him in the back?
Exactly. So you go, I need people to come in here that are soldiers who are loyal to me because why? I'm paying them, or they're related to our brother, and we're Scottish. And so either you get hired by the king or you get hired to kill the king, right?
Right.
And so,
well, how many kings back in the day killed their brothers just because
next in line
that he might be a threat? So screw him.
Yeah. We're both firstborn, by the way. Just letting anyone looking at us know.
That's right.
Get in line. But the point is, you got to do both, right? I got to build this Soc IR team, which is hard to do, and I got to hire from outside. The minute I'm doing that, the first two insider threats are most likely your security people, they have the privilege, or your sysadmin people. So
okay,
let the drawbridge down, let the good guys and the bad guys in at the same time, right?
So why don't you dive into a little bit of how do you see the best way to protect yourself from SOC fatigue? So just as a point of reference, I just interviewed for a place that does SOC outsourcing, right?
Right.
And so I was a believer in the gap in the market in terms of people just don't have budgets to build a big SOC team right now.
Yeah.
But you do have the infrastructure that needs to be manned. So what do you do?
Yeah.
And the answer is, well, you could outsource to a SOC so that you already have a managing team. You get a little bit more visibility to it because it can run 24/7. You have that outside coverage.
Yeah.
And it just saves you budget because you don't have team to not only man it, but if you're going to bring in a best of breed, you don't have time. I know, at least at my former employer, you don't have time to have people learn all of the different products. Like, you're going to have the expert in one thing and he can learn some other stuff, but man, getting him to really learn all the different stuff in detail is not realistic. So do you see SOC outsourcing as a good idea? And outside of that, how do you see companies or teams solving the SOC fatigue problem?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, and I've got kind of a 3-part answer. I'll go quick. The first thing you touched on was, Carl, you can't build your security posture in isolation. I mentioned the CIO, and that's because budgets drift off. Like, CIO gets 10% of the budget, CISO gets 10% of the CIO's budget, so there's that connection. But if I was building that security posture, what I learned the hard way, Zero Trust, is it's an identity-centric, data-centric world. So I got to go find the corporate guy and go, what's our crown jewels and what's the data you really care about? Because I can't cover it all, number one. Number two is that thing about the people. That's identity. So I need to go find the identity IAM people, like the architects or the IGA, and find out, oh, it's Microsoft Active Directory. And I go, oh, crap. Can we get something else? Am I going to influence you to go best of breed? By the way, who's your architect and what's his strategy? I have to work together with that identity person. So that's answer one, is on the SOC fatigue, is I better get into bed with the identity people and understand their strategy. Maybe Okta can save me. Maybe the Microsoft IGA, Active Directory, and AZ.
But your point is, you're looking out.
I need help, right? And then the second one, like you said, I need those guys on my team because security and identity in Zero Trust are the same effing thing, right? And network, but network's always been there, and we've always triangulated.
Screw the network guys.
Packet weasels, all of you.
Just joking.
Just joking, because they come at me for being an R&D app guy, and the packets don't lie. But I need them because network and security, NOCs and SOCs have different viewpoints, trying to keep things we overlap on availability, but and then the argument is, where's integrity and confidentiality? Oh, it's number one. These other two people go, not necessarily, Carl. And I go, I have to deal with them. They've got more budget, but we all need each other. So that's one, to avoid SOC fatigue. Number two is like you said, outsource is the cheap. That's the, Carl, we're cutting your salary or your salaried employees, or you can't grow. And I go, well, if I can't hire people and grow, I got to go out. So the outsource thing I better be able to do it, because for every 100% you outsource, 50% of it is a management overhead. So that's a short-term thing. I think it works, but you better be good at managing outsource.
Right.
The good news is that they have to worry about that evergreen, like best of breed versus whatever, and where they make money. And I think, you interviewed somewhere, right?
Yeah. You can say name. Yeah. It's Arctic Wolf.
Arctic Wolf, but very good outsourced company. And their point is customer intimacy, trying harder. We're going to solve all those TCO problems. Well, how are they doing it? In my humble opinion, one, they're picking the winners that can integrate. Number 2 and 3, like the reasons I would do internally and outsource to the people that are doing that, automation, right? If you have Soc Fatigue and they're talented people and you're not able to solve it with AAA universities, like there's not more Soc people coming,
right? Then
give them less work. It sounds stupid, but give them less work, and you want them to do the smart guy stuff. Like there's not enough. If you need goals in hockey, you tell the rest of the team, get them the puck, do all the defense, get these guys a puck. It's a team game, but get them more shots and we get more goals.
It's why you delegate in any business, right? You want your top guys working on top stuff, and you want the mundane 100%. Stuff passed down.
So passing down goes, okay, there's a tier system. Tier 3 are the SMEs. Tier 2 are the up-and-coming troubleshooters. Tier 1 is Eyes on Glass help desk, and you got to pay the price, and you hope to move up. Well, Tier 4 is automation.
Right.
If I could just automate the shit, and then you go Tier 5, AI. So to me, the automation and AI is the only way out. It solves the needle in the stack problems too, or even the smartest guy goes, man, I'm doing these OODA loops and telescoping in and out and building swim lanes and trying to figure out who the insider threat guy is, who's got a big advantage on me. Well, AI doesn't sleep. AI can start looking for slow and low attacks, all those things that they're smart guy tasks, but they're absolutely like, you've got to have persistence and curiosity and never say die attitude, because it's a grind, right?
So that kind of speaks to the SOC side of things. And what about on the insider threat side of things?
Right.
Because I've always been interested, I don't know why, but I guess Snowden is the first for me, for my era of people to, like, for millennials, that's the real first big case of insider threat. That's like a whistleblowing case that was big enough,
a combo case,
especially in cyber, to really like draw attention to.
Yeah, it caught our imagination in a bunch of movies and blah blah blah. Right?
Well, and it was it's got to be one of, if not the biggest case of unveiling of government surveillance, right? Like
equally true.
We really, I mean, maybe you did, but the public did not know what the government was doing behind closed doors, surveillance-wise, especially in the States.
Yep.
And this uncovered to the masses, oh shit, they're doing a lot of stuff that probably isn't very ethical, for one.
Let's call it an overreach.
Right. Yeah. Definitely people were not aware of. That's for sure.
Yeah. There was definitely no transparency.
And so, but what that speaks to in a grander scheme of things is that if the NSA can be insider threat breached,
right,
and then
anyone can,
and brought out to Russia and given asylum, then your tech company can surely be breached from inside.
I'll address that two ways, because I was in the game, right, with UEBA, and we thought we had a smarter,
you
better.
You want to explain UEBA?
User and entity behavior analytics. So,
which means.
It means I always liken it to the game of Clue. You know, Professor Plum. So telemetry of people, weapons, and location. So you're trying to triangulate who, what, where, and by putting those three things together and using pattern recognition and analytics, you can start to determine if people's day-to-day office behavior, mostly handling files, is normal,
right,
or suspicious. And within that subgroup of these are suspicious things, because the kill chain is I break into places, I go get the crown jewels, and then I exit stage left, and there's kind of 4 steps to that. If you're doing the first step, I go, man, somebody's poking and going places they shouldn't. That's an alarm. If the next thing you do is the second thing on that kill chain, I go, well, that's exponentially scary. That's not twice as scary. That's like you're doing exactly what I thought you'd do.
Yeah, and so how do you track? Because you look at a setup like a sim, right, where you're going to have the prioritized red flags pushed to you.
Those are the red flags. Yeah.
Right, but so what do you do in the case that someone is sneaking around those red flags? Because a lot of the times, the person that is going to be the culprit of insider threat is someone who's aware of what the red flags are, right? Like there are people that have access to files. There are people that, you know, have the availability to get in the doorway because they probably created that doorway, right? So how do you manage a system where the person running the red flags can get around them? What do you do in that case?
So I think that's the whole idea of indirection, where you're pushing logs to somewhere where the rank and file can't get to them. So that's users in a SOC. But within a SOC, you go take all the SOC logs, like when people are adding up, subtracting people who can work in a SOC or giving and taking privileges, you have separation of duties. So if I'm in charge of adding people to that, let's call it privileged access Active Directory, you're the approver.
Right.
And then we send the logs to a third person in a totally different organization to, in fact, send it to a security guard at the front desk that gets an alarm every time someone's mucking with the logs. He has no idea.
Yeah, that's helpful, but there is still cohesion that can happen there. Collusion,
now
I
you
should
need a
say,
couple,
right? So that does help,
right?
But I think the next step would be something that we've both worked with in partnership is like a detext, right? So you know, maybe you can dive into it a little bit further than I can, but my understanding of the detext system is they're using AI, and some built-in
call them algorithms.
Yeah, or you know, they're pushing rules, right?
Policy and rules.
Yeah, they're pushing policy was what I was looking for. They're pushing policy based on, you know, a system that they've
that's another mental acuity scorecard. That's 3 for me. Yeah, go.
They're obviously have created policies assuming based on research and development that they believe are indicators that someone may be, you know, maybe a risk to do insider threat, right? And so my understanding is what they've done is they've built an AI around things that are not red flags, but in combination become red flags. So the example that I remember when having the presentation from Detext was, you know, someone who has access to a file changing the name of that file, not a red flag.
Right.
That's not going to come up in a SIM.
Right.
That guy's allowed to change his file name. That's fine. But let's say he changes the name of that file and he also downloads the file.
Right.
Okay, again, separately, not a red flag. Together, maybe starting to but it won't show up in a SIM, right? Thirdly, now within the span of a week, he's writing his resume. Okay. Again, all 3 of those things separately are never going to set off red flags. Those are fine. You're allowed to do those things. But in cohesion together, those aren't that should pop a red flag, and that's the AI and Detext is going, hey, actually, all together,
this is,
and it's not necessarily the action. I think what they do is person A is at risk. Take a look at his behavior.
It's one, you involve HR, like that you asked the deterrent is bad guys, whether like Machiavellian, like they know exactly what they're doing and they're in a leadership position or they have all the privilege, or disgruntled, you know, non-malicious people or just lazy people, none of them want to get detected. So as soon as HR, it's like shoplifting, right? If you're doing certain behaviors on a closed circuit TV, they can do a behavioral analytics and go, that person looks like 1 + 1 = 3, right? And so all you do is send customer support out to go, hey,
1 + 1 = 2.
I know. That's 1 + 1 = 3 is the escalation.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
See what I did there?
I thought you got caught in your little cognitive loop.
Possible. But our podcast is you and me = 3. We're a force multiplier.
Okay.
You see, we're like having a third guest here.
Oh.
You see, so
much content. It's like there's 3.
Yes. So much collaboration and cohesion.
Okay.
We're like a first-second batter that are just like in sync and working together. We're like 3 batters when we get out there. And we run fast around the bases, so we're a blur, the 2 of us together.
Well, one of us runs fast, and the other one's in the dust. So.
Blur, yeah, slow blur. That 1 + 1 = 3 is what I meant by if I have a kill chain, like if these 4 things you require, you have to break in, you have to look around and escalate your privilege. You have to go and seize the crown jewels, and then you have to make your way out. Those are the 4 steps. Like you said, the first one or any one of those alone, I go, that's an alarm. It's concerning. But in sequence, I can already tell where you're going. And so I'll call the first one a 20% certainty.
But what do you do to
Two of them together aren't 40%, they're 60%.
Right. No, I understand.
3 of them together.
Yeah,
right?
I understand the multiplier. But what do you do if you're not using a DTEX type thing to try and track these? Are you just screwed?
Right.
Like, do you need some sort of...
Yeah, I think so for 2 reasons. You've got this alarm fatigue, right? Where there's door alarms or like, I call it the snooze detector, like the where I won't say where I was, but I would walk in and go, because I was the CISO, I would walk in and go to a bunch of very secure areas and I'd set off the alarm because I didn't have access. After a while, I got to know the security guard. And he would just like go, it's Carl again. And as soon as he'd get an alarm, he'd go like, he'd kill it. And on the way out, he'd go, yo, you set the alarm off again in the following area. And I'd go, if I was a bad guy, he's telling me what alarms I'm setting off. So you can see the double problem you just pointed out. Number one is the people on the sim and Eyes on Glass are really good at catching dumb alarms or nuisance alarms and going, hey. The smart guy is really good at either evading them or flooding them.
Right. And so what happens when you have someone that's
right,
pulling from somewhere they shouldn't be?
Yeah.
What is the realistic odds that a company has the resources to have somebody looking for non-alarms?
Right.
Like managing the alarms is hard enough.
I agree.
So someone looking for non-alarms. So a product like a DTEX is super important after you've built your stack.
Yeah.
First, figure out Soc Fatigue so that the major alarms are covered.
Yep.
And then secondly, how do you get the uncovered alarm should be your 2, for some reason doesn't seem to be on the top of a lot of people's lists, but those should be 2 major players in what you do to protect yourself.
I think you just nailed it. Like short order chef, you need that.
Right.
And gourmet meal. Like, so that smart guy should be spending days looking for bad guys. Like going, I did a bunch of pattern analysis. And what you can do though is go, there's, of all our users, hopefully less than 1/10 of them are privileged users. So we know that the keys to the kingdom, the ways to get into the vault, the ways to get to the secret sauce, it's a limited number of users, but they've got a lot of power. So let the SOC do the general users. It's going to take them forever to break in.
Right.
The sophisticated guys, one of the best spies stories in the U.S., and I forget the person's name, they were FBI. He said that from my point of view, I've always got to take chances. I'm sitting there, I've worked my way into the FBI, I know where the file is, and I'm tempted to take chances.
Right.
So what you do is set, a perimeter of you keep watching the privileged accounts and go, is there any unusual activity? And that's the win on UEBA and DTEX is anomaly detection. So to your point, spamming the alarm, and Carl is constantly avoiding yes, no prompts and trying to like get access where he doesn't have. You go, man, he's got a pattern there. I'm going to get HR to talk to him. The question is, Snowden was a backup and restore guy. Like he was a sysadmin. I know he talks about like reporting to.
Yes,
people.
You're very big on that. Snowden.
Well,
wasn't as smart as.
No more. He talks like he reported to a general, and it was more he was the sysadmin for a general. And yes, you can. If you're the sysadmin, they give you tasks and whatever. My point being is,
you think Snowden was punching up on what he
says? I think
he's
punching. I think he's punching. My point is, sysadmins are important, right? And they have users that are VIPs, and they own their desktops and whatever. But
sometimes they see aliens and
possibly, or
maybe they're in Area 41 or
possible. I'm not going to go there. Point being, right, that there's an example. A sysadmin person has a lot of privilege, is constant, like you say, they're flying below the radar because they're going into a lot of privileged places. They're backing up tremendous amounts of data going.
Because that's what they're supposed to.
They're supposed to. And it's going outside. So I triggered all 4 of those kill chain things.
But they have a pass-through.
They have a pass-through. And you got to go, I'm not going to compare Snowden to Joe User because that's alarming. He's tons of data and it's going to outside the company, what's going on. compare Snowden to other backup and restore guys and go,
Right.
yeah, that's Snowden, that's the other guy.
Other people
It's
doing
all
his
good.
job.
He's doing his job. He's backing up. Wait, this Snowden guy is backing it up to Hawaii.
Like you
What
said,
the
though,
fuck?
often the problem is the guys that are doing this are the people at the very top of the kill chain.
100%.
So it's a CTO and there's no one to compare him to.
Yeah,
Right.
Machiavellian leader is the one use case. It's the Dexter thing. The serial killer is also the chief of police, so he's running back and covering up his tracks.
Right. And that's what makes insider threat such a big issue, right? And I
100%.
don't understand why it flies so far under the radar. I don't know what needs to happen for people to pay more attention to it. It seems crazy to me.
Yeah,
but-
wouldn't you look down that way? Like if I was spending my money, I go, that's the one that's going to get me fired. This nuisance stuff.
Well, I think everyone just naively believes the bad guys are out there and we're a team inside. And so
Yeah.
we're all fighting the same fight, but it's just not reality.
I think you're right, A. I think B, bad guys are let's call it not criminal masterminds. They're kind of lazy and economical. If I could avoid doing all this stuff, those 5 kill chains, and go straight to an insider and pay them.
Well, also, so here's the thing. This is what I was going to lead into. What area that makes money do you know of that doesn't have corruption involved? Like everywhere
By
that there's money
definition.
involved, there's
Yeah.
corruption involved.
Yeah.
So if you're working for a place with money, you think there's no disgruntled employees? Of course, there's going to be some disgruntled employees. And so
Good for
at
you.
some point when they're disgruntled, if they were offered money to bring information outside,
It's economics.
it's just hand in hand, right? Like that's going, those possibilities are going to come up.
Like all you have in place there is ethics. And so,
Right. You're banking on the fact that all your employees are fighting for your team.
right?
So you're assuming none of them will ever be angry? Like,
Well, and you know what? In the analysis of the UEBA use cases I always say the no Lee Harvey Oswald's no single shooter theory. That one really smart bad guy with all the insider threat, he did what I did. He got in league with the identity people and the operations people. And like you said, I need a sysadmin plus a security guard to let me in. Whether unwittingly or together, it was a culture that you created. And it usually, so an insider threat was often preceded. They go back 2 years and go, this is where it all started. And these are all the email chains. And they do a postmortem, right? And they go, but the triggering point wasn't this guy deciding to be a bad guy. It was your corporation did something. You laid off
you pissed
people.
them off.
You didn't, Carl
He didn't
went
get his
and asked,
promotion.
right?
whatever
Carl
it
asked for a
is.
CISO budget and you made him lay people off. Or
Or
you
even
had
worse,
really stupid policy rules.
often too, it's companies doing things that are unethical
Work
that
from
really,
home?
that really should come out. And you got to
It's
think like
bad management, right?
if you know that you're doing things you're not supposed to, you should be worrying about it leaking, and they're not worried.
It's cause and effect, A. B, if you think of unions in the military, so unions, if you're a management team, if there's a union forming, it's because you're messing up. You're pissing off your employees.
Right.
And if you would just look at the reasons why they're unionizing and going, hey, I'm going to pay you more and benefits and I'm being a bit of a snotty micromanager. If I change those, will the union go away? They go, shit, yeah. So
Well, in both-
military, hearts and minds, right? You want to go into a foreign territory and convince them you're the good guys? Win their hearts and minds. Start building schools. Start getting clean water supplies. Don't walk around with guns. Win their hearts and minds.
Well, I think the problem with both those cases is with power comes, for some reason, being naive, right? You
Yeah.
build all this power in your head and you're like, they would never do that to me. I'm
They better not.
I'm the top notch. They would never,
They're
like,
lucky to have jobs.
yeah, you build this mindset.
Work from home. You need to get your ass into the office.
Right. And for some reason, they just start thinking they'd never leave here.
You don't care about me. I don't care about you and your business.
Right. And so that's where that kind of leads into. But okay,
Imagine quiet quitting. If someone said quiet quitting, I go insider threat,
exactly. So hand in hand, right?
or at least a malaise of not caring about it.
And I think that's why a product like DTEX is so important, because even if you have the keys to the DTEX tool,
Yeah.
right, you don't know everything that the AI wants to pick up on. So you can't really
Right.
skate around it, right?
You
If you're-
can't. This is a Stephen Covey 7 Habits thing. You can't talk your way out of a behavior.
Right. Like if you're building the policies in the sim, you can walk around them.
Yeah.
But if AI is detecting things that shouldn't be detected
Right.
and you don't know what they are, then how are you going to get around them?
AI. People are worried about AI being biased, but it can't be bribed.
Exactly. Okay. So one more thing I wanted to touch on, just to give some, I don't know how I want to describe this, but I guess some personality to the podcast, in a sense of a lot of what we talk about is very broad in terms of cyber topics and whatever, and we relate them back to personal experience or whatever, but something that I think we can give some insight to that is not something you can just Google or would hear on other cyber topics is some of the stuff that happens within the Canadian government.
Right.
Of course, that we're allowed to say.
Correct.
I'm secret cleared. You are
more than secret cleared.
Very cleared.
Top secret plus. Let's call it that.
Let's leave it in the upper echelon category. So there's things we can't say, but we'll stay within the sort of general area.
Or I won't be a guest on the 4th episode.
Or Carl will vanish.
Yeah.
One of the two. So I wanted to touch a little bit on to how CSPV works.
Right. Cool.
So CSPV is the cybersecurity procurement vehicle.
Right.
Right. Okay. I just want to make sure I got that correct. Which is where the government passes through major projects.
Maybe point out why they wouldn't just go direct.
Well, I guess there's a few reasons, but I think mostly because of bribery, right? They want to make sure
100%.
they need to be able to prove to the public that there was competition involved.
Fair
right?
procurement.
Because they're trying to show that there's no collusion. And
they got the best bang for the taxpayer money.
Right. The taxpayers want to know that their money's going to the right area, and so there needs to be competition. So there has to be a competed vehicle.
Right.
So generally what happens is there's a need somewhere inside of the government, either at one of the departments or at the overarching department, which would be SSC. What is the version of SSC for the states?
There is none.
They don't even have.
They don't.
That's
so
strange.
like I always tell them it's like corporate IT.
Okay. So yeah, SSC is like not the governing body, but like, yeah, almost like the HR of the government.
I think where your IT help desk is there, but it makes sense.
They oversee the other departments,
IT wise,
right? From the network side,
correct.
So mostly drummed up from SSC, especially if it's going to multi departments. Sometimes also drummed up from the department itself. There'll be a need.
Enterprise, right? And
right.
Then, to your point about fabric versus best of breed, if it was just I want to buy a specific, I really like this CRM. CRA is going to go, we just want to buy our own. And where SSC goes, we're the central broker, and we think you're not the only one that needs that product. We think it's an enterprise-wide purchase.
We're going to push it, right.
Yeah.
So it often gets approved through SSC.
Correct.
But the point of the matter is there's a need somewhere. They'll build, and by they, I also mean you, will build what that project looks like sometimes,
correct.
Right? As an architect inside of the government, you're often helping build, hey, okay, you guys have this visibility need.
Yeah.
What should you be looking for?
Fair.
Here are some of the prospects.
And let's call it procurement chunking. So nice architecture, and people like call me a conceptual high-level architect, which is code for crayon drawings on PowerPoint.
But point of the matter is they're saying, hey, Carl, we have this need. And so can you tell us if our dream in the sky of these integrations, does this actually make sense on paper?
And how would we buy it if so?
Yeah. What are you hearing from the outside in terms of what's actually...
Who's the... What direction are things going, and who's the best of breed?
Right, because the people inside of the government are going to hear from every OEM that they have the best product ever, right? They're never going to get a true tale because they're all going to be pitching them.
I was going to ask you about this. Doesn't that all of a sudden put the V in VAR?
Yeah, it does. But let me get through this and we can go to that. But yes, so the government obviously can't always trust that what they're hearing from the OEM is correct because they want to sell them their product. Right. So they'll use consultants like yourself to go, okay, is this product actually good? Does this fit our need? And maybe we have a gap. And Carl, how can we?
Yep.
So inside, that's sort of what's going on from.
And in theory, I'm the outside person, but they're the inside person. They're institutionalized.
You're the inside-outside person.
I'm the inside-outside guy.
Right. You're inside, but they consider you friendly with the outside because you're a consultant.
And I'm smart enough or not smart enough to go, here's what's kind of trending in the outside world, but I'm also empathetic to, but is that appropriate for the government of Canada? Because you guys are in the inside world, and it might be that way for a reason.
Right. And you're not incentivized to pick and choose. So you just pick what you feel is the best product to help move it forward. And also you're looking from a perspective of I may have to use those tools. I want you to
Careful
use the stuff that's good.
Yeah, one, you're right. I think the other part is I try to treat it like taxpayer money is my money, in the sense of, if you were the CISO, what would you buy? And be careful what you wish for, because you might have to use it. To your point, I'm what's called client side, or I work for the crown.
Right, and so that's what happens from the inside. The government finds their need. They'll use architects like yourself. They'll build out the scope of the project. I
mean, I would argue they want to be in long-term partnerships with OEMs for that, public-private partnership reasons you talked about this is a long-term marriage and a fabric. It better be right, or we need to make it right.
Yeah, I mean, they may have a favorite going in, but the point of the matter is what they do is they figure out the whole, and then they figure out what they want the filler to be, right? And so then the project gets pushed out onto the CSPV, which is the competed vehicle. And then OEMs and resellers and whoever else can bid on said project.
Right.
Oftentimes you will see resellers win these because integration is involved. 100%. And the OEMs are not very good at building partnerships with other OEMs and integrating them because they favor their own product.
Yeah,
right?
And at best frenemies, right? They may be competitors or near to competitors.
Good luck figuring out which part is whose when they all feel that they have the best piece. And obviously, from a monetary perspective, it's beneficial for them to have a bigger piece of the pie. It's
pretty hard for me to, that CrowdStrike model where they have their ecosystem and their partners. 5 years ago, how would you have predicted who's who in that zoo?
And so that's where that, like you were explaining before, that V and VAR comes in, the value-added reseller. The good resellers are good at knowing the product set of different OEMs, understanding what fits with what in terms of building an integration story, and then bidding that to the project.
Packaging,
That's the value in the reseller.
1,000%. Two, when you were asking me about a fabric and you mentioned Palo Alto versus Zscaler, right? And I go, which one, either or? I want to go to a VAR and go, as long as I'm indicating I want to go through you, you're going to test it and vet it and give me the pros and cons, and you're going to have it in the lab going, here's how they work together or don't.
But also a VAR that you trust understands both product types, right? And that's the tricky part, is you can't always trust that they really understand what should be plugged where. And that's the whole point of that's also part of the whole point of the competition of the CSPV, right? Is
that's fair.
Let's see what the masses come up with, and let's see what a good integration story looks like. And then often it needs to be tested before it goes past, because the theory is great, but we have to actually see that it works.
The other part, and this is the value of the people that did the CSPV, the vision, and I helped with writing some of it. They're geniuses, genii. Someone looked that up. But the point is they foresaw that, and what they want is a really fair horse race, and made the best rider win. By that, I mean the OEM with the right VAR, with the right SI is a perfect combo. But there's a Canadian content, right? The number of times, and I wanted to ask you about this, there's no other system where like a Canadian startup would sneak through there and either keep going round to round because they had a differentiator or they were the little engine that could. There's things in that vehicle that actually says, I get it, you're a startup and you're Canadian and you deserve a shot. You can actually get through and actually either influence the bid or get in league with some of these bigger OEMs that would otherwise ignore you, going, oh, you're the missing piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and I think that basically labels out all the good parts of the CSPV, and I would be cautioned not to talk about any of the bad parts of CSPV. So that's about as much as I want to talk about that, because
that's fair.
Otherwise, I think that's the rabbit hole that we probably shouldn't talk about.
We want to be on future CSPV.
So CSPV, good, all good things.
And remember, I'm working for the Crown, so I'm a little bit biased. The other part is separation of duties. If you're gonna be a VAR or an OEM, I don't know you. Like I might love your products, but I'm going to go on this side and go, careful what you wish for. I might like you, but I might show up on the pros and cons about how good or bad you are.
Well, at the end of the day, I'm not really talking about the effectiveness of CSPV. I'm just explaining what CSPV really is, right?
And why it needs to be there.
Your opinion or my opinion about whether it's good or bad or what else goes on in there is not really important. I just want to give some perspective to people on how a sort of process for a government purchasing
Yeah.
product to build their infrastructure works.
You know what I find funny? Like Brad, when you went in and presented, I only said good things about you after you left. And,
Okay.
And a few people at bars go, really? I go, yeah, I know. I like your product and whatever. And they look at me and I go, like when you're presenting, you're saying good things about me, right? And they go, why would we do that?
Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Well, I think time-wise that's probably good enough for this episode. I will keep some of the notes I had for the next one, but I think that's a wrap for episode 3.
That's a trilogy, man. I went 3 for 3.
I think maybe it's time to bring another guest.
I think it's time. I know I'm not a cleanup hitter. I know that.
We'll get another interview going for the next one.
Awesome, man.